I have a hunch we'll just talk our way through it.
That's it. It's simple, right? Let's see. Back going. All right. Actually, let me stop that.
Are we going live with this? Like what's your format?
Yeah, it's live right now on YouTube. We're gonna get this thing started, and then I'll do an intro.
If you think about all of the applications that you
So with AI, that's kind of
All right, welcome everybody to the Access 360 podcast. This is actually episode number 11. So we've been doing this for a few weeks now, a few months now, and this is the place where leaders and ideas come. We say to evolve, to kind of mastermind and see what comes out of it. Hopefully we share some useful things amongst ourselves and sometimes for the audience as well. And we've got two great guests here today, two people who have been leaders in many different capacities and also worked with people in different capacities, from coaching to guidance to consultation to just how to live life a little bit better and thrive while we're doing it, and sometimes get over those bottlenecks, those challenges that stand in front of us a lot of times. I talked earlier today about like the big rocks that we might want to move in our life, but sometimes it's a small pebble that gets in our shoe that really annoys us and gets in the way. So today I'm going to introduce our two, I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves. We'll do ladies first. Julie's somebody who I have met recently, but have in some ways I think become good friends and good business associates, learning about what we do. And I know she's doing some good work for people and communities and just helping people do business better. Julie, do you want to share? Well, welcome. And do you want to share a little bit about yourself? How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me today. I so the history is that I spent over 20 years in corporate America working in the pharmaceutical industry and spent most of my career in learning and communications. And somewhere along the journey, I had a lot of bumps and bruises, and I was able to use them to catapult the business that I have now. I got my ICF certification in coaching and went back to school. I just kept going back to school. And now I'm a leadership coach and a trainer. I facilitate group coaching for small business owners. And I also am a keynote speaker and workshop development leader for different organizations. But most of this is my phase two. I call it my phase two because I just transition from corporate into my own business, and I'm super excited. I feel like now I feel much more aligned in my life in who I am and what I do. So it's a super exciting season for me.
That is awesome. Well, it's good to have you here. And I think I almost I resonate with that. And I know that Mike talks about alignment too. It's like sometimes we find that sweet spot where we've been through some things and it's maybe now time to recalibrate, or we've recalibrated, I'm sure, in our lives many times. But good to have you here, Julie. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Mike, over to you. I mean, we crossed paths through another incredible community that we're a part of, and we've had some conversations. And yeah, I see you as a powerful leader, and probably like you talk about alignment. I looked at your website earlier. Do you want to share just hey, how you doing, and what are you doing? What are you up to these days?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, David. Well, I'm up to too much. That's what it's all about managing the calendar these days for sure, which is something I talk about a lot. But yeah, so I'm Mike Van Pelt, or David, as you know, people just call me MVP, just happens to be my initials. No, there was no branding involved in that, although I wish my parents would have thought of that when I was born, but that's the way it goes. So I am a Christian men's life coach. I am an author, podcaster, and my latest speaking talk is really around the idea of the power of asking for help. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that. It'll circle back, I'm sure, to that conversation. But yeah, I love helping men. And it really stems from my journey and losing my identity and having a group of men surround me at a time when I was like, what the heck is going on in my life? And I really catapulted that into what has ultimately become my true man life coaching business, and really a true man taken right out of scripture. God's Jesus walk on, here on earth as a true man, and ultimately I believe the goal is for men to walk down that path and follow that model. And if we can follow that model, we know we're not going to achieve it, right? Because that's the ultimate in greatness. But if we follow that model, I believe that we can be the very best men that we can be in our lives, and therefore, be, the very best business owners and husbands and dads, and prosper in society. So a lot on my plate these days, but man, am I having a blast. And I'm a little like Julie, this is 2.0 for me. And, I think that's good. I think sometimes it takes a while to mature and really figure out what is our purpose in life and how do we get there. And I feel like I'm there, and I'm having a blast helping a lot of people.
Wow, this is awesome. But it's so funny because I never know. I invite people on, and usually I have something in my mind and a theme, but it looks like we're all able to think about the 2.0 version, or the way that things have come into our life, and we've figured some things out, and now we've got a little bit more alignment, and that can always get knocked off today or tomorrow, and we have no idea what's going to be thrown out. Mike, I do have to ask a question though. That's a big mic. What kind of mic is that?
It's a big mic. It's got this little, it's all my equipment is Rode equipment. This is part of the funny story about Mike starting a podcast. I had no business I to this day have no business touching anything technical or electronic. But I called a company that I trusted and done business with before, and I said, I'm starting a podcast. What do you suggest? And so they hooked me up with all this Rode equipment, and Mike figured it out. And the rest, they say, is history. Nearly 4 years later of doing, actually over 4 years later of doing podcasts. So I've spent a lot of time sitting behind this puppy.
I love it. I love it. I may have to ask you for some tips. I just got a podcast consult 2 podcasts ago. I had 2 expert podcasters on as well. And you can tell when somebody's been in this space and had these conversations and is a good communicator, good setup, it adds something. So thanks for that. All right, well, let's jump in. I have a few topics. We'll see how the conversation goes. But one of the things I was thinking about was leadership and bottlenecks that come up in our leadership. But sometimes it's we getting in our own way. Somebody said that to me, David, you just need to get out of your own way. Like, you got like all this talent, this rawness that like you can bring to the table, but you're stopping yourself. And so I've seen that. I know that in my life. But Julie, maybe I'll send it over to you. What's your take? Like, how do you, whatever you want. This is an open one. Getting out of your own way. What's coming
Getting
up?
out of your own way. Well, first, there's 2 things that come to mind when I think about getting out of our own way, right? And that's the story we tell ourselves and the processes we have, right? In those 2 places, I probably can address almost every problem that you have. But the most important thing is, first of all, this. And I always say that the story you tell yourself about yourself is the most important story you will ever tell. And that story that you tell yourself about yourself gets in the room before you do. And so that story better be a good story. Otherwise, you're going to be defeated just getting in the room. And I talk about this a lot because a lot of us small business owners need to be the brand and the voice of our company. But if you're not able to get on camera, if you're not able to take the mic, then you've lost the ability to really shine and for people to get to know you without having to spend time with you, because now you can spend time doing videos, being on podcasts. I've been a podcaster for 3 years. 3 years I've been podcasting and building a personal brand for myself. And so it's like, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had that social proof of what I do. And so we talk about this a lot, and a lot of people get stuck in the, oh my gosh, I look fat. I don't like the way my voice sounds. I people are going to say mean things to me. There's so many reasons, and I'll end with this point. We could circle back to the process thing, but I just did a session yesterday. I was on a networking call, and we talked about the power of saying yes. And the idea here is that, you know, I tell people what my mother used to tell me. And she used to say to me, Julie, you're not that important. People are not thinking about you as much as you think they are. So just cut it out and do the thing, because nobody cares. Like, we think that everyone's thinking about us, but everyone's only thinking about themselves. That's the real truth. And so if we frame it out like and we're doing it to serve someone else. Like, we're really doing, we're out there in the world, we're sharing our voices because we're serving. And if we put the attention back on us, that just becomes us as being a narcissist. Like, oh, it's all about me. It's all about me. It's not about you. It's about the service that you're providing to the audience and what you're giving out to the world. So I'll leave it to there, and I want to hear what you think about all that.
No, I love it. Julie, it's not about you. Mike, it's not about you. David, it's not. I mean, that as you started to share, I was thinking about those prior, and they still come up, like the limiting beliefs, the limiting identity we have about ourselves. Like, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. Who am I to be a leader in this room, kind of thing. Like, those things are in the head. And I've done a lot of work to help with that. And, you know, as you were sharing, it's also thinking about how do we decide to shift our identities as well. And I'd love to get into that also, because sometimes a leader is like a leader inside, but they haven't let it come out in some ways as well. And I was listening to it's a similar Alex Hormozy. I love to listen to some of his stuff, but this morning he said, I used to care so much about what people think, and then I realized they have zero concern for me and what I'm doing. Like, but you know, Mike, I'll give it over to you. What are you thinking about this topic? Where do you come in?
Well, David, I'm thinking about a story that you've heard from a mutual mentor of ours who always says, you know, if you hand somebody a group photo, who do they look for first? They look for themselves first. They want to see what they look like, which is interesting. We spend a lot of time focusing on what we think people think. And a good bit of the time we're wrong. They're not thinking about anything other than themselves at all and what they need. But the whole identity thing is something that I can really relate to, because I went through quite a period of time when Mike was trying to figure out what he wanted to do when he grew up. Having my identity tied to what I do, not whose I believe in. And so commonly, specifically in a business environment, right? People ask your name, then they ask you what you do. And then inadvertently, their mind starts going, oh, he's an attorney. He's got a $2 million house and a 3 cars sitting in the driveway that are worth $100,000. You know, we start playing this little game with ourselves. But the reality is our identity should not be tied to what we do. And in my case, once I made the connection with where I was at in my faith-based journey, everything changed virtually overnight. And I began to care less about what people thought about me. And it was like an elephant stepped off my back. And I think too many of us go through life worrying about, what kind of car do I drive? What does my house look like? What does my hair look like? Is my makeup right? Is, you know, all these things that most people really aren't paying close attention to. And I would dare say the people that are paying close attention to those, people are probably not somebody you want to surround yourself with in the first place.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. There is this theory about adult growth and development.
Mm,
And so when you look at, there's this guy, Robert Keegan, he wrote a book called Immunity to Change. And what he does is he tells you the stages of growth, right? And as leaders, we need to be something what he calls self-authored leaders. And a self-authored leader is somebody who can kind of step outside of what everyone else is thinking and think for themselves, right?
yeah.
It's this going back to Stephen Covey's begin with the end in mind and being able to design the life that you want. Okay. So when you're able to design the life you want and to sit in a place of authorship of your own life, you are able to kind of quiet all the other noise because now you're on purpose. Now you're on mission. Now you're on point with what the bigger picture of your life is, right? I believe at the end of this thing called life, we have this thing called the life review, right? Whatever religion you're believing in, right? Somewhere we're going to meet the person who created us, right? And what are you going to say at the end? And I don't know, I have this like belief system that we're here for purpose, like we're here on purpose. And when you find out what that is, it puts you in a place of leadership because now you're operating with different principles than the old. Like, oh, what are they going to think? What am I going to do? Like, no, you're sitting in the driver's seat now. You get to take the wheel and direct that as much as you can. Different people, different belief system, right? God is leading the way. Yeah, he might be leading the way, but you're holding the wheel, right? You're still holding the wheel of your life, and you need to create it in such a way that makes sense for the bigger picture. And at some point in the phase two, like that's what we're all talking about. We're talking about this phase two, is that we become very purpose driven. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting in the phase two, right? Because we'd still be in the phase one. Phase two is about service, and it's about like having gone through the thing that we went through. Like I went through my own personal, like, I don't want to call it hell, but like my own journey to where I am now. I mean, I can only sit in this place because I went through some stuff. So
I love it. I love it. Well, I think that's part of the journey. Oftentimes, whether we didn't choose the journey usually things have been thrown at us, and then we've got to figure out how to navigate it. And whoever is the maestro behind the scenes, like he's put it in. That's how I look at things. Like God's put things in front of me, and even when they're challenging, they're there for my growth, for me to discover something, to figure out where he wants me to go next. And he's also positioning me with whatever skill sets and tool sets and experience sets to then do the 2.0 or the 3.0 or whatever the thing is. Let me ask this question, because we've talked a little bit about identity and the challenges we might face. Let's say somebody is facing that. One of the things that I did recently was I actually mapped out like the different areas of my life and how I want to live my life, how I want to think of myself in my faith journey, in my leadership journey, and my health journey, and like all the different areas. And I got pretty clear on that. I actually used AI a little bit and it was really helpful. And then I said, well, who do I want to be as a leader in our organization here for Access Virtual Staffing? Like, what would I said future casting, what would a multi-million-dollar CEO, like, how would he act? How would he operate? How would he do all these things? And I review those things regularly, if not daily. And that's part of a practice I'm putting in place. But I'd love to, if you've worked with other leaders and people who are trying to, maybe they've seen the 2.0, but they really need to get clear on it and ingrain it and forward it. Like, how do you kind of guide somebody? And I'll go Mike on this one, and then we'll go back to Julie. But Mike, like, what's something that's worked when you work with people for them to really step into that identity of who they really are?
Well, I think you have to be very clear, if you have a purpose, what your purpose is. I recently had a conversation with a guy who he has a full-time job, but he wants to become an entrepreneur. And the guy was all over the place. And I think he thought he had a purpose, but it was just all over the map. And, in the end, you've got to be detailed about what it is, what you want, and put a plan together to go out and achieve it. You've really got to visualize these things. And I think I talk with a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, and so many of them think they have a great plan, but it's pretty clear in their messaging that they have more of a hobby than they do a plan. It's just not very clear. And I'm at a point in my career with the people that I'm working with that I want to work with, for example, I don't like social media. You've already heard me talk about tech. If I'm going to work with somebody on social media, you better come at me and let me know that you know specifically what's going on in the marketplace. I want to know details. I want to know very specifically what's going on and how you can help. If not, I'm going to have to move on because there's plenty of people out there. And I think that as business people, sometimes what we fail to do, and I've gone through this, I think as entrepreneurs, it's a journey that we go on. Being clear on your message and your purpose is really important. Otherwise, you're going to confuse people, and people don't want to do business with people they're confused with. They just don't. So your messages have to be very clear, very specific. Your goals the same way. You need to have very clear, specific, tangible, and achievable goals. And all of that is really critically important to, bettering your best and becoming the best version of you.
Yeah, and I think that's important as we think of. Sometimes it's just like, who are you? What do you do? And like, can you literally have a clear answer to that question, whether it's in a business networking group or it's just you're meeting somebody for the first time,
Right.
and this is who I am. This is what I do. I'm pretty clear on it, and that could change tomorrow. That could change and evolve. Like it's not going to stay set in stone. But I think when we have a real clear grounding at a core level who we are, and then what our mission and purpose is in life, that arms us in a certain way. It also allows other people, in some ways, I don't know if I'm making this up, but like to have a certain freedom around us because that's who he is. And it doesn't have to be set. What do you think about
Well,
that,
it's
Mike?
confidence. It's that confidence that people know that, we talk about all the time, right? So know, like, trust factor. What is the know, like, trust factor? Well, many times it's confidence, portraying confidence, and being, having the intelligence to know what is it that you do. And if you have a hard time explaining that, people are just going to struggle with that and they'll move on. The competition for many things in the marketplace is fierce. And if we sense that you're not confident in what you're doing, people just go find somebody else.
Yeah, I think that ties in with something Julie said earlier. It's like before you walk in the room, do you know who you are? Do you know how you're going to act? Do you know how you're going to show up? And that's important. Julie, what's your take on all this?
Well, first of all, David, you just gave me an idea. I don't even know
Uh-oh.
you realize I just got this like crazy idea. Well, I have a program called Before I Speak. Okay. And the reason why I created this program is because back in the day, I was doing a lot of speaking engagements and training, really. And I kept messing up and falling down. And I'm like, who do I need to be to get on this stage? What do I need to remember as I prepare to get on the stage and get in front of the audience? What do I want my audience to remember or experience when they're with me? Very similar to what you did, David, on this chat GPT. And like, you're looking at your, the before information. So it's the before I walk in. How do I put the right hat on and put the right mindset on so that I can walk in the room as that person? And I'm like, oh my God, my program's called Before I Lead. My program is called Before I Lead, but I didn't have the connector part. So I'm going to do that same activity for leadership as I did for speaking, which I haven't. I don't even why I didn't think about that. But like, it's this idea that we're ready and we're in the right mindset, because for leadership and in what you're doing here, it's like you're not the same David in different relationships, right? In the relationships you have with maybe your spouse or your parents or your friends, you're like there's a different version of you there, right? And there's a different version of you when you're a leader. There's a different version of me when I'm coaching. And it's not like I change who I am. I just change my focus, right?
Mm.
I never change who I am because I'm always me and I'm really not, I'm, I try to be as authentic as I can, but in different spaces, I know I have to access different parts of who I am, which are, some of those are very hard, right? One of them is listening. One of them is the listening version of me. And there are 4 levels of listening. And so you have to be very mindful when you're in that space with people. So um, I don't know where I'm going with this, David, but I got excited when you started talking about that because it is really about how we prepare ourselves and remember why we are there in that moment with that person because it's so easy to forget.
Yeah, like no matter what I wake up some mornings with some crap in my head, and that's why I have some of these things to remind. Like I have a morning
Yes,
routine, and I thought about that going into the shower the other day. I said, man, if you have a really good morning routine, then even if you do wake up with junk in your head, it's like within a half hour, an hour, I'm in a good place where I know that I'm gonna be in a position to step forward powerfully in the day. And as you said that, Julie, I was thinking about 2 people. One, Tony Robbins, he said, you know, I wasn't Tony Robbins. I created this MFer, is his language. And I've been listening to David Goggins recently, and David Goggins is a Navy SEAL who like went through this whole transformation, but he's like, I created David Goggins. Like, not like I'm the creator of the universe, I created him. I just
sure.
realized who I am or who I was not who I'm really capable of being. So I went to work in the dark spaces to figure out like who is this person, and now I know who this person is, and now I know how to bring him forward. But it's just like, and I'll go back to you, Mike. But I think it's I play ice hockey. I put on my uniform. I'm a different guy on the ice than I am
Yeah.
necessarily in this conversation. It's just that you kind of have a different edge to it. Mike, what do you got on that?
Oh boy. Don't you do, well, if you're going down the whole sports arena thing, by the way, Julie, my wife wants me to sign up for your, the Before I Speak course. Yeah,
Did she just say that to you, Mike, or how did you
yeah,
know?
no, it's just a joke, but, um, I am incredibly competitive. I've been involved in athletics my entire life, and I've really had to rein it in a little bit. I'm, I can be, I kind of grew up around a lot of people that were like, okay, here's how you win. You put your foot on their throat and you keep scoring and, just really dominate. And I spent a good portion of my life thinking that life was about wins and losses and there was no gray area. And that did not serve me well, actually, because it turns out I'm not a very good loser. And you spend most of your time in life losing over winning. But it's in those losses where you can figure out how to become better. So there's purpose behind, failure and losing. And I used to think that losing was losing. I just didn't play well enough. And that, everything was about winning. But, as I really evaluate everything in life, even as business people, I have traded time for dollars, and spent a lot of money on stuff that didn't work because I fell in love with that nice, new, shiny object. And I think what I had to do as a business person, much like I did in life, was figure out, okay, who am I? What direction do I want to go in? And then who do I need to surround myself with that is on the same page as I am? And so I look for alignment when I'm working with people, because I want to surround myself with like-minded thinkers that I want them to think differently so that we can expand, what we're working on and be creative. But I want to be around people that are givers. I want to be around people that are positive. I need people around me that have good energy. I don't want energy suckers around me. And I want people that are highly intelligent and motivated to go down the same road as I am. And I think all those things and attributes are important. But I think a lot of that is wisdom and maturity. I don't, are there people that show up day one and they flip the switch and they go? Perhaps there are, but that's not normal. That's not normal. That's not the norm. And I think we need to understand that. In fact, I would dare say that if there's one, there are many downfalls of social media, but if there's one downfall of social media is that people buy into is they see these pictures or they see these videos and they buy into the fact that somebody became an instant millionaire. And that's not how it works, folks. Most of those people really had to, you brought up Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins, when he hit it big, was broke. And there are numerous stories like that in the marketplace. And so sometimes that humbling is what we really need to get us moving in the right direction. But in fact, I'll leave you with that. Stay humble and surround yourself with people that can help you move the needle.
Well, I think that's a good segue as we kind of transition, and we'll start to wind down where we're going with this. But you get present to who you are, who you want to be. You start to define it, and then it's how do you lock some of that in? How do you support yourself? How do you surround yourself with? I think what you said, Mike, like the right kind of people, the people that you've said, this is who I want to lock arms with. And what I've found a lot of times is when you do surround yourselves with those people, even if you're kind of faltering or wobbling around, you're like, oh, Mike's doing this, Julie's doing this. Like now I'm like back on track. They remind me who I am, or I see what they're doing. And I'm like, that's why I have them in my life, because that's going to support me. And Julie, you mentioned earlier, I know you have individuals you work with, you work on group levels. I was recently in it was crazy, and I'd love, wherever you want to come in on this, but a friend of mine invited me to his mastermind, like coaching group. And it was the first time in a while I didn't feel like I had to lead. And it was so refreshing to me as a leader to not have to lead, like even in this conversation, right? Like I think we're all kind of leading the conversation in different ways, but like I'm responsible for it. There was something that was empowering about not having to be responsible and just listening to a conversation. Somebody asks me a question and I come in. But how do you look at the alignment portion and having people create systems for themselves in the way that you work with them, Julie?
Yeah, in the beginning you were talking about that, and I work with CEOs, right? So CEOs are usually my clients, and I have a CEO playbook. And so one of the very first things I do with people is we look at purpose. Like we go to purpose, personality, and job description. Those are the very first things I work on with people. And in that discovery, there's a discovery process of who they are. And outside of that, we're creating this persona of them, right? Like kind of like what you did, David, and what Tony Robbins did, David. They're creating this persona, and I call it the superhero version of themselves. So like it's called perspective coaching, right? So like, here's where we are right now. Here's really what we want to be. And it's the consistent reminder of that and surrounding yourself with the right systems, the right people, and the right mindset so that you can actually step in to this next level that you are, the 2.0 version, the 3.0, whatever version you are on yourself. Because I don't know what version I am on myself. I know I'm in my phase 2 of my career, but the versions of me, I don't know. That's a whole nother story. But it is intentional, right? It's an intentional practice that I do with people because I know how to get them leverage in that creating that confident version of themselves. That's really what it is. It's creating the confident version of yourself. Because right now, the version of yourself isn't working. You're tripping over yourself. You're getting in the way. You don't have the right mindset. And then the second is the right process, right? And that has to do with the calendar. And I just got off my calendar session. I literally run a calendar session every Friday at 9:00 where we work together as a collective community on our calendar for next week, because I need to make sure that everybody has the right level of activity when it comes to sales and marketing, because that's the engine of our business. And those guys are small business owners. So they need to have that breakdown, and we color code everything. Like yellow gets a color for hustle time, green gets a color for my making money time. And it puts everything in perspective. So now you're able to, like, everything becomes clear. You have a clear sense of the version of you that you want to become. You have a clearer sense of the activities of what you need to do and when you need to do it. And then you have the other program before I speak is like the messaging, the message of what we need to do to be able to articulate, is what Mike was saying, your clarity on what you do and your story, the thing that I do that, like, brings people in, the thing that, becomes more important than this, because when you're speaking, everyone's looking at their phones. They're not really listening to you. And so that's how we figure out if you're interesting or not. If everyone's on their phone, you're not interesting enough. So
That's right.
that's kind of I don't even know if I answered your question, but I was on a rant and it worked out. So
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Mike's laughing, so it had to work pretty good. I'm gonna come back to you, Julie, and then we'll go to Mike. But one of the things, you said working with CEOs and leaders, and what I've found, because in our business we're often working with the leaders in the organizations or the CEOs, and we say bottlenecks, but a lot of times I find they either don't have all their stuff aligned, like you said, like calendar and otherwise, and they're drowning in stuff that they shouldn't be doing. So what we do is we try to help outsource some of the admin and other tasks so that they can be doing the executive level leadership and guiding and all the stuff that they really should be doing. But oftentimes us as leaders, we take on too much, and then we're not doing the things we really want to do in our zone of genius. What's like the one thing or two things that you see most often as the challenges for those CEOs, or the things that are holding them back? And it might not just be identity. It might be, man, I just don't have good systems in place, so I don't have enough time to do the stuff I should be doing.
I mean, it comes in a lot of different ways, right? The one thing is, a lot of people get stuck in developing. So they're busy developing content, courses, like frameworks, and they're busy. And I'm like, you need to be busy finding clients. Like, this is a waste of your time right now. If you don't have anything to buy the stuff that you're making, then it's kind of like a waste of time. So there's a lot of things that they don't know how to do also, especially when it comes to their sales process. They don't even know that there is a sales process, and they don't know how to document their sales process. And so they don't really understand the whole scope of what that is. And so in essence, what I'm doing is I'm teaching people how to lead their companies. That I'm like the business teacher, like CEO teacher in a sense. So there are a lot of different bottlenecks. And so one of them is perfectionism. It's like, okay, I can do it better. Okay, but you don't have time to do it better. Like, there's only so many hours in a day. But what's interesting, David, and we should talk more about this, is that my calendar program specifically tells and shows you the indications of when you need to hire your first person. And so I teach about the replacement ladder in the program, and Dan Martell. And he was on my podcast, by the way, before he was even like a thing. So
he came to mind 30 seconds ago. I was going to bring him up.
He was on my podcast. We got to interview Dan Martell before he became famous. So that, like, before that book became famous, we interviewed him. And so the idea here is that you're doing the right things at the right time. You're able to see when you need to hire your first person. And we should talk about that, because it's a clear indicator. If you didn't figure it out already, then that's the next step. And then the next step is like them spending the time to develop the SOPs, to know how to do that, to have the mindset around delegation and building their CEO playbook, building their operations playbook. Every CEO should have one, and most people don't.
Yeah, that's something Well, I was going to say because he talks, well, one of his quotes is 80% and done is 100% awesome. Like, but the point is like, you don't have to do it. If you can get somebody to do it at an 80% level, like that's a good thing because then you can be doing the stuff that you should be doing. But also he always loves to use the word playbook. And like you just said, like, what's your CEO playbook? And are you following it? Like, what's the optimal? What's the ideal? Are you doing it? And how are you going to adjust that if not? And as you were sharing earlier, Julie, it was, without sales, there's no business. So sales is a good place to focus. And if that's where you should be as a leader, building and developing relationships in business, then let's make sure that you're in that zone of time more often than not, rather than circling around in operational type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Van Pelt, how do
Yes,
you
sir.
how do you see this? How do you see, where do you see a lot of the bottlenecks and the people that you work with, or the challenges that they face to really get them to step into that next level?
Yeah, a little like Julie. The word busy, get that out of your vocabulary. That's just bad. If you're busy, yeah, so what? You need to be productive. And I think that starts by understanding what kind of results do I want to achieve? What are results? What are the results that are going to build my business? And then you back into the sales process. I talk with so many people that they're building stuff. They're going to school. They're taking this course. They're taking that. And we talked about this earlier. Your customer doesn't care how knowledgeable you are at that point. You need to know what your customers want. You need to speak with people about what they want, and then you create a product that is pointed and geared in that direction. But too many people just do busy work. They go to networking events and they don't know what they're doing, and they're wasting their time and wasting others' times. You need to know what, just because your calendar's full today doesn't mean that it's productive. And
Yeah.
you've got to know the difference between imperative and important and productive versus busy. You just simply have to do that because you will run around chasing your tail. How do I know this? I've done this, right? I don't point fingers. I've learned lessons the hard way, but I see it so commonly. And I've gotten to the point where I'm a really big observer. I love to just sit in a room and watch people. And you can pick so many of these people up really quickly. It's not all that difficult to see who's doing busy work and who's doing productive work. It usually comes in the form of the way they act, the way they dress. Boy, have we really fallen off we are really, don't go to a networking event wearing a hat, torn jeans, or a t-shirt, or shorts for that matter. Come on, show up professionally, act professionally, you know? And so, all these things are really important. And it's so easy to see the people in the room and hear the people in the room that are top notch at what they do versus mediocre. And, I don't know about you guys, but I don't like that term mediocre. I don't want to be mediocre. I want to work with the best. I want to be the best. I want to surround myself with the best. And that's really important to me. And so I'll go on a direct line to somebody if I think they're on it, and go shake their hand. And, the rest of the people, I mean, you got to figure this out the hard way, but man, it's all about being productive and getting results. That's called a business. Anything less than that is a hobby.
Yeah.
Did you have something on that, Julie?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, look at all the books behind Mike. It's like there's a whole lot of reading to do in business, right? And the whole thing about networking, it's cracking me up because a lot of the people that I work with are like on these networking calls. I'm like, okay, this is fantastic. How many of them are converting? How do you turn them from a networking call to a discovery call. And so we talk about this. There's an intentional practice that needs to happen from the first meeting to the second meeting, right? But if you don't know how to do that, if you're not conscious of that even happens, then that's part of the problem. And that's what I teach people. I'm like, okay, I need to teach you how to go from intro to second to third. Like, and that's what the sales process does, right? And it's that like way to do that without being too salesy and icky. Like, you don't want to be an icky salesperson, but there's a way to get them to, and I should like claim this as like mine. I call it turning the corner. Okay, where you're like walking with them like this until it's time to turn the corner, and then you like lock arms with them in your mind. Okay, you lock arms, and now you become the doctor, you become the prescriber, right? And now you're able to prescribe something for them because you've listened to the part that I missed is you got to listen to them. You got to find out what their problems are. You got to get to know them, get to know what their problems are, and then, turn this corner. So that if you learn that, it will change everything for you because now you actually are gaining the momentum and like people are moving to the second call. And like, I don't know, when that clicked for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. This business is viable because I can do that. Because once you do that, then they're on the next call with you and you could do your diagnostic, you could do your discovery, and now they could potentially become your client, which gives you like so much better odds than you had before. But that needs to be practiced. Like, I don't even know if you understood what I just said, but like I have to like show people in my class like what this looks like in real life because it really is a differentiator. Like all these little tiny changes that you make within your business are differentiators between the fact that are you going to succeed or fail? Because we know how many small businesses fail. And they fail because of one reason. It's the CEO, right? It's you. The failing is because of you because you didn't know how to do the thing that you needed to do because you didn't get the support you needed. And that's why people like Mike and people like me exist so we can help you through that process so that you can learn how to do the thing that you don't know how to do without suffering for 3 years, right? Because Mike and I have suffered. I've suffered. Like we made all the mistakes. I made all the mistakes, right? I wasted a lot of time and I lost a lot of money, right? But now we've learned something that we can train and teach other people so that they can gear up faster. And so like the time to making money is shorter. And so that's why we work and we do what we do, right? Is we do it because of that reason. And we also do it because it's purposeful. I mean, Mike doesn't do this because it isn't his purpose. Clearly, like we don't serve in this way because it's easy. We do it because it's our like God-given purpose. Because otherwise we go get a job. And it's easier to have a job, to believe me. It's easier.
Ick. Ick.
JOB, just over broke, right? I've heard that acronym. So to wrap this up, and Julie, what you did say did make sense because recently I've joined another networking group, BNI, and I've had a number of iterations of that. And I've learned from my first time being a part of a group and what would frustrate me is how do we make this work better? How do people actually do things that make it work for them? And I've learned a lot of those, what you were probably alluding to and describing is like, well, there's a method to the madness. If you want to build trust with somebody, you got to talk to them more often and you got to let them know what it is you do. And specific, like there's a whole way you lock arms, turn the corner and then get into prescription mode. And so I think that's really the tail end of this conversation for today. We've talked about, well, what are the things that leaders struggle with? And that might be identity. It might be figuring out what the bottlenecks are, but then it's beyond that, how do we support ourselves? How do we put the right systems and processes and people in place and position ourselves as a leader to do the things we need to do as leaders rather than be either in the weeds or doing other things that are taking away from our time. So with the final moments of our time, maybe it's an opportunity for all of us, and I'll just kick it off. Like a final thought from this conversation, something that you want to leave based on what we've talked about the audience with. One thing that's just been on my mind in this last moment is, you know, I think it's valuable for us to do the work to figure out what is that mission, what is that purpose. And sometimes we like just try to steamroll forward without knowing like what's on my heart, what's my purpose here, what's my mission, and getting clear on that, which is what we talked about earlier in this conversation. So, Mike, I'll go over to you. What's a final thought you have walking away from this conversation, or you want to leave the audience with?
Man, I got so many. We'd be here for an hour. But one of the things that I've learned to do is you're going to have to slow down in order to speed up. And that slowdown can be very uncomfortable. I will tell you, when I first was presented the idea, because I didn't come up with it, to start a podcast, there was something about it that made me go, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And too many podcasters or people get into podcasting now and they think they're going to become an overnight sensation. And I actually hired a coach. I'm a big believer in getting help. And I hired a coach, a guy that had been in radio for 30 years. And I said, I don't understand all this talk about monetization of a podcast, and I don't even care about it. I said, I want two things from you. Teach me how to ask good questions and teach me how to tell great stories behind a microphone. And we worked on that a little bit, and I had some natural ability, and it just kind of took off. And I'm still tweaking and changing it. There's nothing static about this. And I'm looking for people to help me take it to the next level. And I think that's what so much of life is, right? That things aren't static. You've got to be a little flexible, but you have to be patient, and you've got to persevere through the ups and downs of things that are going on in your life and in your business. And, if you can do that and stay focused and clear-headed about the direction you're going in, you've got a chance to win the fight. And to me, that's what this whole thing has been about. And as I've found the right people to surround myself with, and I'll tell you, the circle is very small. It started pretty wide, and it's I've shrunk that circle down, and those people are working for me for very strategic reasons and for a very strategic purpose. And so you've got to, again, I mentioned this earlier, you got to surround yourself with the right people. You got to get focused, and you got to be clear-headed about the direction that you want to go in. But that takes time. There are very few overnight successes.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for being here with us today. Mike, how do people contact you if they want to get in touch?
Absolutely. The best way to find me is truemanlifecoaching.com. That is my website. You will find my calendar on there. You'll find the podcast on there. And about midway down through the first page, you can sign up for at the first of the year, we're going to start a newsletter. See, this is things I'm learning from. All these years later, I haven't had a newsletter. We're going to do a newsletter. So you can go to the homepage and sign up for the True Man Inner Circle newsletter. And we'll kick that out every week and give you some bite-sized chunks of things that will help you be a better man.
Brilliant. I'd like to be a better man. Thanks for being here today, Mike. Julie, what's your final thought on all of this?
The final thought is do the preparation, do the growth work, right? That's what we've been talking about. The growth work is discovering who you really are. And it's discovering your purpose. I started doing purpose work with people when I was 32 years old. And that's how this kind of all started. I had no idea what I was doing. I took this 7 Habits of Highly Effective People class. It was a 2-day class, and they talked about building a personal mission statement. And ever since that moment, that's what lit this whole journey up for me. I started doing personal mission statement work with people. And so that work, the work of the personal mission statement, gives you the internal permission to do the thing. And once you can do once you get that permission, it's a weird thing. People need permission to do something, but that understanding of that mission and that purpose is so important. I tell this story, and I didn't tell any of the story about my dad, but when my father passed away, he left me his life story to finish. And for 2 years, I wrote his biography. And in his story, he says, he had a near-death experience and he saw Jesus and he saw his mother, and they said, go back. Your mission has not been completed. You need to go back because your mission has not been completed. And I'm like, oh my God, that gave me some information. I'm like, that information is huge because there was a reason my dad was here. He wasn't finished. And so we all have that thing inside of us. And I believe that my purpose is to help other people figure out what that is and to help them facilitate that in the world. Like that's what my purpose is. And so I have spent all this work on myself so that I can help others. And that's what I'm going to leave with you today. Do the growth work, find a coach, talk to Mike, talk to me. Let us help you figure out what it is you need to do to get on that right course. My podcast is Stay on Course, right? The Stay on Course podcast, because we need to stay on the course to where we are going. And so that's what I'm leaving you with today, David.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And how do we stay on course with Julie? How does somebody get in contact with you?
Yes, julieriga.com. You'll find all my information there.
Brilliant. Well, this has been a beautiful conversation. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Mike, for joining us. And I'll